Good day, folks.
Hello.
Hello.
And get folks to sign in. We'll give folks a couple of minutes here. I don't know if Justin's probably not going to make the call. Has a conflict and we haven't gotten organized to get another time slot yet.
Yeah, I was talking to him this morning. He said he couldn't make it today.
Okay, great. A couple of these are tangled in Docker Inc. stuff. Milos, you're not ready to take those on your shoulders?
Wow.
There's a lot of tribal knowledge. Okay. Doing a little math here on our voting calculation here. Others to show up.
Voting calculation.
Well, we did basically our logo conversation.
Fair enough. What's the latest status on that?
That's what I'm trying
which
to.
ones? Okay.
I think I've got 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 4 to 5. Okay, so 7. Logo 7 has the win so far. I feel like we're doing this thing at the stadiums where the hydro cars are jumping whales. I don't know if you guys do this in other silly stuff in other countries. It's the only way we can make baseball interesting is to actually do inter innings videos. Probably sounds pretty strange. I'll have to post a video of the hydroplane races at baseball games. Maybe it's a Seattle thing, actually.
I don't follow baseball, so it's kind of
Yeah. There's 2 things probably going, and you don't follow baseball, and hydroplanes, where basically they take old Korean helicopter engines and put them in boats that are on a second of explosion. Are probably not universal events.
But it sounds fun.
It is fun. It is fun. They make a lot of noise. It is pretty impressive to see them basically fly across the water, barely touching. Okay, why don't we get started? Let me do one quick check. Okay, so Justin's didn't act, but we'll give him a chance to come in because we've got a bit before we get to that topic. Okay, so first one was stabilizing the build. So there's a couple of items here that came out of the transition of Docker donating distribution. There was, the repo itself, which is the open source repo, which a bunch of you guys are using for your products, and that's awesome that we'll have the ability to contribute to it. There's also, well, there's that. Just start with that. I'm not sure what the latest is on stabilizing the build and getting some owners of it. Not that anybody else couldn't contribute to it, but it needs some TLC for somebody to just focus and get that in place. The downstream of that is, once that's done, there's a couple of other repos that go into how the official Docker registry image, not Docker, I guess the registry image is promoted. And that is still going to be owned by Docker at this point, because as most, not most, but many, the official images that come out of the library section of Docker are actually built by Tinan's company, InfoSec, on behalf of Docker, right? It's a contract partnership. So the idea is that distribution or registry would still come from there, but it comes from this official build. Like we're trying not to have multiple fragments. So the big, and then there's actually another Docker / distribution / library image, just to kind of put the whole context of those things. So it really starts by having a stable build. Does somebody want to speak to folks that have been working on that lately? I'm a facilitator here. I'm actually not doing the builds.
So I thought it was the GitHub folks who sort of like stepped up at the beginning. Or are we talking just purely about the actual like image builds? Are we talking about the CI builds, or?
We're starting with the official, what's now distribution. That's kind of the main upstream source. And that trickles into all the other builds that eventually get into the registry image. So the first part is, how are we doing on getting distribution built on a regular basis, like automation?
I'm not sure if we're actually pushing any of these images. I mean,
sorry, I maybe I dumped too much and confused it. So there's distribution, right? The new CNCF repo. Is that automatically being built at this point? Do we have that in a stable point?
I mean, the PRs are building, but I'm not sure if it's being pushed into any registries. Like, I'm not sure if it's pushed into Hub. I'm not sure, to be honest. So it's worth checking.
Well, so if we feel like distribution is automatically built and it's stable, then we could start working on the downstream effects of that, which is Docker / distribution library image. And Tinan's group can take on that component. I was just trying to get a sense of where we are. Well, let's take a look.
Okay, so I just had a look at the GitHub action, the CI action, and we're not actually, what we do basically, like we run tests and then we build the binaries, but we're not pushing it or publishing it anywhere. So I don't believe there is any like recent image being pushed anywhere. So that definitely needs to be sorted.
So I'm just trying to take some notes. Distribution is automated building the binaries.
Yeah, so as part of the build, we just like build the binaries, but we're not pushing them anywhere.
So is there some official owners? Like, who's taking ownership of the build?
I don't think we have official owners actually. I had the impression that it was the GitHub folks who, like, since it was done in GitHub Actions, like Chris or whoever it was. That was my impression at the beginning, but maybe that's wrong.
And do you guys feel like it's in good shape at this point, and we can just work downstream from that?
I mean, the builds are the builds are definitely like building. I think there was a PR which was basically testing E2E, but I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I just submit that PR
yeah.
for a very basic E2E pipeline. So that includes build the binary, but just set up a Docker image and run a basic push. So
Actually, you know what? Come to think of it, there is some kind of like push script.
uh,
Hmm. I think we'll need. I think we'll need to look. Yeah,
yeah,
because I think your change. I think your change went into 2.8 branch. No, or was it actually like merged into?
main branch. Yeah, it's just
It
the
was the
merge
main.
into main branch. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Uh-huh.
Da-da-da.
So do we think that we're ready for the downstream of, official image to start being built from this? I guess that's the question.
I think we should probably like make sure we're ready. I wouldn't say. I mean, clearly, like we still have we still have a bit of a confusion here. So we should make sure by next week that we're ready for that.
What does it mean to be ready again?
So
What does it mean to be ready?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I guess we can build the PRs and we run at least some basic E2E tests.
I'm sorry, say that again. I was typing to try to capture notes.
Yeah, sorry. So Wayne asked like, what does it mean to be ready? And I said maybe the good start would be like to make sure that PRs are building, they're passing all those checks, and that we run at least some basic end-to-end tests
Yeah.
before we push.
So you're saying before we push, where is it getting pushed to? Because
Yeah, so right now, as I said, like we're not pushing it anywhere right now.
okay. So my understanding, and again, I'm just trying to facilitate this conversation. I don't have all the details on it. I'm picking up on the pieces and seeing them disconnected and asking where they connect.
Yeah.
There's the distribution registry. Sorry, let me share my screen here. So we have distribution registry, and it talks about it's not the official. So I'm not, are we saying that this is the one that gets? I think this is the question we're trying to figure out if anybody understands what's going on.
Did you?
I don't see your.
screen?
Yeah, I don't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. There's a second button I have to hit. Apologies.
Okay.
So there's distribution registry,
Mhm.
and then there is the official registry, which is it listed here? Yeah, okay. So this must be the one that comes from that just was based on what here, right? Docker distribution is now distribution. And then there is registry. This is the one that would become from the official library images. And this one is actually backed from this repo, Docker distribution library image. Apparently this is what feeds this one.
Yeah.
And this one is supposed to, my understanding is just pulls in the binaries.
Oh yeah, and Docker file.
So the question what we're trying to do, and honestly, it's a question for this group, is how do we want to see these pieces? Because to be quite blunt, I assume a bunch of us are here because you're running your registry based on distribution and you want to own your own destiny. So you're contributing to try to get some stability. As part of a CNCF project, the assumption is we're also making this available for others to consume. And how would they consume it? They could just take the binaries and run it themselves. Historically, we've said that customer users can just run the distribution instance themselves in a container, right? Kind of the assumption from what this team would do. Sorry, we're container people. So how do we stitch these three together? So it GitHub distribution. So if we work our way from left to right, this is where you're all working and contributing. That one would get pushed here directly as a result. And then it gets picked up in this repo to be distributed as an official image. Considering what Justin was saying is these two need to stay owned by Docker because this is the official image. What I think we're saying is this team will make sure this is built and stabilized and run the set of tests, a set of tests. So we started identifying what those are. We can push directly to here. And that's kind of our handoff of the CNCF distribution project is built and tested and pushed as an unofficial. I don't know what that means. It just says and of course, we've got this failed stuff. We need to figure that out. So this will be our handoff. These two, this is what we build. This is our validation. And then Docker Inc. can pick up from using this branch, this repo to then produce the official image.
I suspect we've got a fair few users, including us, who will pick it up from your leftmost tab there under the releases section.
So you're going to pick up the binaries.
Yeah, there aren't any binaries in there. It's just basically a tag. That's certainly where we pick it up from. So I imagine we would get our testing completed. There'd be some unofficial one in distribution registry there. But only after we've got all the continuous tests and the end-to-end tests run, then we would tag a release. Some people would be picking it up straight away from there, like us. And at the same time, we would then tell Docker, hey, we've done 2.8. Can you do the magic?
Okay. So Milos, do you know if anybody's looking into what's going on here?
I
Oh, look,
don't-
it's based on Circle CI. So this is still just disconnected altogether.
Yeah. Who is, by the
That's
way?
just-
I don't
That's just a
believe.
reference in the README, right? So we just need to change the README to reference the right CI system.
Yep.
Who is the owner of that? The hub organization.
That's a good question.
It should be
Docker
Docker.
Inc.
Yeah, it should be Docker.
Okay, so I can definitely chase this. I guess so this should, I imagine this should be transferred to CNCF, right?
It
Or
seems
only-
logical to me that this would be transferred to CNCF because it was based on Docker registry and that's what was distributed. And it says right here, not the official image.
Yeah.
And what they're specifically saying is this could almost be our staging ground for what CNCF hands off. And what Docker picks up would then own these last two. Right? They will push to here. And I'll talk to Justin around, transferring ownership if that's what we're agreeing on. And then Docker picks it up and uses this branch to build the official registry image, which is here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Wayne, what's your take on this?
So you wanted someone to take over this? Yeah.
Well, I'll double check with Justin, but if this does get handed off, then we would need an owner to kind of just update this and get it back built or
Yeah.
building and tied to distribution.
Well, yeah, I can be the owner
Okay.
of this part. Yeah.
I'm just taking notes in Hack. In fact, I'll just, so you're not just sitting staring at a screen. Where am I? This would be. Update this one. And obviously we got to get the ownership rights, Yang. So I'll talk
Okay.
to Justin about that, and maybe Milos can help. Okay, that seems fairly reasonable. And then I don't know who's looking at the builds, but do you guys feel that the bar that we set here for PRs are building, passing checks, run some basic tests and end-to-end tests, that's happening? Everybody
So
comfortable with that?
it's definitely happening on merge to main. I just had a look. Whether we want to have more requirements and that kind of stuff, I mean, that's an open question, but this is definitely happening. I mean, it's demonstrable. If you look at the GitHub actions, like you should see the builds succeeding.
Okay. These are
So the tests that we're running, are they the distribution spec tests? Because I think those would probably be like some of the more important tests that we could run that would validate, registry
Okay,
API.
What are they? So this one is the conformance test.
E2E.
Yeah. What are they? What's the one they apply for?
What's the validate one? Is that what your
The
question?
last
Here?
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it says 2 months ago. Crazy Max, whatever that is.
Oh, I think those were. I think this is when he was trying to figure out how to build distribution in GitHub Actions, and then Chris, I think, took over and replaced that with CI. Because originally it was Crazy Max who was working on getting registry built using GitHub Actions, and then when the registry was donated to CNCF, I think Chris then took over and then reworked the GitHub Action to what it is now.
Okay. So basically this is Max's attempts to try to get this working, and
yeah,
he certainly was working hard at it. Okay. So is this now dated and we would remove this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you can remove it. Maybe you can, but it is definitely outdated.
Like you can disable a workflow.
I mean, the workflow, that validate workflow, it no longer is there because it was replaced. So it's not running anymore.
Gotcha. So we've only got the ci.yaml and the e2e.yaml.
Yeah.
And this one looks like it's still going, right? So we got 6 hours ago from main. Jan, is this yours?
Yep.
Okay. And was this something was done by okay, so Chris set this up.
Yeah.
It's just a security scanning to scan the source code to give some warning or error.
Okay.
I marked the build and test a pull request and the validate both as disabled, just so there's no confusion when people are looking at this page.
Great.
Because those both ran last 2 months ago, like we were pointing out earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the ones that, I mean, is it basically CI?
So
And
I'm not
EDE are the
sure. I'm
ones?
not sure. I'm not sure how the code QL actually works. I never looked into that because it's a new thing by GitHub. I think they announced it like last year or something. I don't know about that, but the CI and E2E is running on merge to main, and I think CI is running on PRs. I think as well as main.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It looks like for the code QL scanning, that's only in a single PR right now. And it's got 2 approvals, so we could probably go ahead and merge that, I think. And then it'll be in the main branch.
Wayne, should these, the icon is good. Is there, do you want to rename them or something to, like, I'm wondering, this is
think
alphabetical
those-
ordered.
Right, I think those names probably come from whatever was in the .yaml file, because there's like a .github directory and a .yml.
Yeah.
There's
I'm
a name
not super
attribute.
It's the
familiar.
name of the job, yeah.
Hmm.
Name of the workflow.
Yeah.
Just the name attribute.
Okay.
But
So
maybe the GitHub folks could like, somehow like mark them as like invalid or like.
Oh,
well, that's what
I think we
I
can
think
actually-
Wayne just did here.
I think we can actually go and for each build, delete the builds, and once all of the run, like, I'm going to try that for the build and test deploy request. So permanently delete the workflow run log, and once all of the run logs are gone, they should, in theory, disappear from all workflows.
So you basically delete this, delete these YAML files, and it just clears out.
No, not the YAML file, the logs. Under, like, if you click the name of the workflow, yeah, it just disappeared for me. So I went through and deleted each log under the build and test. And then
Nice.
once all the logs are gone, the workflow itself disappears, which makes sense because just because you delete the .yaml file, you wouldn't necessarily want to lose those
The
logs.
logs, yeah.
So I'll continue doing that for validate.
Awesome. Thanks, Wayne.
Cool.
Great. All right. I think that gives us enough for now, and I'll follow up with Justin and so forth. Go ahead, Wayne.
I have another meeting coming up in a couple of minutes here. So I had an item on the agenda for the expanding the enumerator interfaces to include enumerate over what was it called, either like a file info or enumerate over not the digest but the
Descriptor.
The descriptor, right? So that would allow me to make some part of my backend workflows more efficient, because then I wouldn't have to do a head object for every object that I'm enumerating over. With the, sorry, because I'm using S3 as a backend, and yeah, just having the digest itself isn't very efficient for a lot of use cases. But I think we kind of have agreement in the comments here that it's an okay idea. We just have to wait for the next major version. So the only question I have for everyone here is what does the next major version look like in terms of timing?
So yeah, so that's, I put it on the agenda. I put the release 2.8 release on the agenda, but I guess what I meant was actually maybe we should have a chat about how we're gonna do releases going forward, and that includes 2.8 and a 3 point whatever release, because there hasn't been a release for a long time, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to a 2.8 release. as long as like we have everything that everyone wants to get into the next release in it. And you know, like we were saying earlier, as long as we have all the testing in place in terms of end-to-end tests, unit tests, and spec tests, or not spec tests, but conformance tests for the spec. But then, do we have any kind of idea of like what all features we would want to put into a 3.0 release, and what kind of breaking changes we're open to considering? Should we put out like a call for breaking changes or something?
I wonder if anyone has thought of that.
We had a bit of conversation last week about this. A big breaking, not so much a breaking change, but a big change is the move to Go mod. So if we were to do a release off of main, it would be Go mod rather than Thunder. So I guess the question there would be, is this the 2.8 we're proposing going to be a release with some backports off of main into it? Or is it going to be a cut of main? And from the IBM side, we're happy with either. We're quite keen to get onto Go mod because we are using it anyway now.
I mean, I think like once we added in Go mode in, I believe we've changed the import path to V3 anyway already. So I think the idea was like, if we're doing that, that might as well become part of 3.0 release. But
Sounds like we either have to like skip on the 2.8 release. Like, I wonder if we could just do that if somebody really wants it. Like, if nobody's saying I really want a 2.8 release, then do we really need to do it? And if we need to do it retrospectively for somebody, like if they come along afterwards and say, hey, why did you do a 3.0 release and not a 2.8? Then we could like, you know, do all the, you know, like find the last compatible, non-backwards compatible changing commit and backport anything we want in it, you know, but only do that work on demand if it's necessary.
I think this makes sense. I think this is a valid point because, to be honest, like the last release was like what, 2 years ago, if I'm wrong, or something like that, something crazy. So I think I agree with Wayne on this one. I mean, we have a branch, so should someone like demand 2.8, then I believe there is a 2.8 branch or something like that. So if it comes to it, we can always back propagate the changes and then just do 2.8 release. I think that's
2.8.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy with a 3.0 and mod. The only change I can think of that we were taking seriously was someone requested to be able to set the TLS cipher suites. And they also might be happy with 3. Being that change for them. So if they park up and say, actually, I want this on that, we can just do it, can't we?
Sorry, Steve, there is no 2.8 branch, there is 2.7 branch, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should hold off on the 3.0 if we're gonna make any sort of changes to the API. You know, I wonder if I wonder if we're wasting. I know we're not gonna run out of integers, but I wonder if we're wasting a major version bump without making any changes to the API.
I can just, without getting too off the rails, in that discussion, there has been a bunch of discussions around the listing APIs in general. From the notary work, where we do need some changes in distribution to make notary work. There's this reference collection work we've been doing with artifacts. It's something I've been wanting to bring to this group. In fact, this week I'm working on a talk that will help me shape the message a little clearer. But basically, to store things like notary signature, or back all the way up. We don't want to create another notary sidecar solution where all the registry operators have to run yet a whole nother sidecar and you wind up with a duplicate set of images with different digests that with the same tag. So notary, we're trying to have the thing you push to a registry. You can sign it, and it's the only, you can pull it without a signature or with a signature if that's what you really want, but there's no difference of types, which is what we have with Notary V1. The way we're going to do that is we're generalizing registries the next level. Like we already did OCI artifacts. We can store anything in a registry with a different media type. Now what we want to say is I can store an image, and I can store a signature, and I can link them together. As we all know, the listing APIs are fairly sparse in a registry, and every registry operator has pretty much had to build their own to make it functional. There's been discussions to try to bring this back into registry, into distribution spec, and then hopefully into distribution. We've not had a lot of success getting agreement on what those listing APIs would be. It would be really good if the people that are running distribution, the instance, to weigh in on that conversation. But there would be some at least additive, I don't know if I'd call it breaking changes, but there's definitely additive API changes that we would like to add. We'd like to bring the replacement for catalog API, and to get reference objects out of the registry, we'd like to bring this, it's called manifest links is the current one. The way we're going to bring it forward right now is we're going to bring it as an artifacts extension to distribution. But even the concept of extension APIs is new in the distribution spec. So a whole bunch of noise just kind of dumped there, I realize, but the point is that there is a bunch of stuff that we would love to see added to distribution spec and distribution. And that seems like a very vibrant conversation for a 3.0.
So how far are we with that? Like, I'm just like trying to get some like timelines in my head.
We've, a number of us, AWS and Azure in specifics, and I'm sure there's others. Like, I just know that Omar and I have been talking a lot about this. We do have to ship a signing solution in this year. I'll just call it this year. I'll be realistic. We would like to get something out as an iterative thing in the next several months. And as a software company, not just a cloud, Microsoft has a bunch of software that we want to distribute with signatures. And I bring that point up is we hope that software can run on other clouds, on-prem, with Harbor and all these other products. So unless the signature solution works across all registries, it's kind of a fail. And we know each of you have customers that also are asking for a signing solution. And I think we've all come to an agreement that a registry specific or a company specific signing solution is not all as interesting, because customers are multi-cloud or they're pulling software across clouds. So all of that, all I'm just trying to say is there is a business push behind it. So we're committing resources to get it done. So I have confidence that we will have something this year that I hope to be finally released this year. And we'll certainly have previews. In fact, I have a set of PRs staged for this listing API and the other stuff that we're doing for the RCI artifact manifest, staged in a couple of different repos. One of them is in the Notary project. So it's like pending. The wave is coming. And I'd very much love for this team to help with that, from an input, from feedback, and actually building out some of it. I was trying not to go off the rails on that because we do have a bunch of other agenda items. But in the sense of, yes, there is some stuff coming that we'd love to see added. And it sounds like a 3.0 release, as a big number, kind of like, here's the major change kind of thing, seems to make sense. Whether that means you guys want to do a 2.8 in the meantime, or there's early drops of 3, like we're not just going to magically check everything in and woohoo, 3.0 is done. Right, we could start with 3.0, and then here is the next 9 months of stabilization and new features churning on the 3.0. So I'll stop there and let others.
That's what I was basically thinking. Like, it seems like there's quite a lot of like awesome work you guys are doing, and like getting it in would be awesome. But I'm just wondering, like, whether waiting for all that work to waiting for all that work to be done before we release 3.0, it's like, especially like a lot of people, like you said, like they sort of like depend on like these releases and versions and stuff like that. So I personally think like we should cut 3.0 release rather soon, and then like gradually start adding these awesome contributions.
So I think what you're saying is, should we switch to Go mod and get a 3.0 base and then start doing these other things that maybe like a 3.1?
Yeah.
How does this group feel about using interim builds of, it's interesting the way you guys are doing, you're actually doing true versioning. Like if you look at the spec, we have all kinds of stuff in it and we're not like revving the spec on micro versions. You guys have to make a call here on what you want to do. So should we cut an early 3.0 with Go mod? Is it go.mod? How would you like type that?
It's go.mod, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Go modules.
Yeah, I was gonna spell it out, but everybody, so anyway. Should we cut an early 3.0 with?
I personally am in favor of early 3.0 release with Go mod changes. And then gradually adding these new features to 3.1, 3.2, and so on. But that being said, like it's really up for everyone.
I think if we're going to do a 3.0, we should also do a 2.8 with just the security stuff that's recently been merged or that's on main that hasn't been included into 3.2. Just because I've had experience where if you do a major version bump, there's a lot of companies that have a bit of caution around that and a bit of like policy. So it'd be nice to provide an image, a version that's just like, this brings some of the security changes up to a version that doesn't break otherwise.
You can move on to
And
3.0 with a good conscience that you've done everything you can for the 2x release.
Right, exactly.
Didn't Justin make some comment that there was a bunch of, or it was Derek or somebody made some comments that there was a bunch of security changes that were backlogged and looking to be applied? Is that what you're referring to?
I was sort of chasing some of those, and I believe we've managed to merge like maybe 2-3 PRs related to those changes.
And also, should we consider to fix the conformance test features in the 2.8 release? I mean, I saw several features in the
So
conformance test.
there is another question, like, so 2.8 would then be cut from the 2.7 branch, right?
I don't know.
Not from main, right?
Uh,
Because Jan, you've been sort of like backporting a lot of these changes into 2.7, right?
Yeah. But we are talking about the 2.8. So I mean, should we fix the feature in before we release the 2.8? Or yeah. I think that there are several critical issues in the conformance test. So
Yeah, I think definitely we should definitely look into that. I'm happy to give a hand with that.
So I record there was a epic in our repository about the conformance test, and
I did notice that.
Yeah, and I have already filed a PR to fix one of them, and some other guys from the community to fix other features. So should we review these PRs and in the coming weeks?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So should I put Yang and Milos on this?
Yeah.
So did I hear that we're basically committing to a 2.8 release? Okay. I should have, actually, I have to double check if I'll be able to be here next week, because there's the Red Hat, there's a Red Hat conference. I just drew a blank on the name. Anyway, there's a Red Hat event next week that I'm presenting the OCI artifact stuff, so I have to double check the time. But assuming I'm not presenting and have to be there, I will have a good way to present the stuff in a way that should make sense for the link lists and so forth. And we can then talk about how we want to incorporate that into distribution.
And that's public, so can we guys can join the event to listen to the
Oh yeah,
presentation?
sorry, let me, hold on. Red Hat Cloud Container Plumbing Day, that's what it is. So let me, Container Plumbing Days, here we go. It is, where do I paste this? Jeez. Participants. More, here we go. Okay, where did the chat session go? Here it is, okay. So that's there. In fact, some of the, I think the VMware, the Harbor folks are presenting there as well. So
Okay.
there's a couple of different things going on there. But anyway, so through that, I'll have a chance to really explain everything. And all the PRs are public, but they're not fully reviewed. So they're just kind of in some staging places. So I'll commit to getting that stuff in a stable place that I can present and get feedback and have you guys contribute to that. All right, if we're good there, well, are we good there? I think we basically took a little journey and I try to copy as many notes, but I think the end result is, this is the biggest piece is we'll cut a 2.8, get to a stable point, stable and secure point, and then have 3.0 as the move forward. And I heard Milos and Yan volunteer for that. So Milos and Yan, are you volunteering to get the 2.8 release done?
Yeah.
Not that others couldn't help, but at least we have somebody to contact. And then what do we want to do for getting 3.0 started?
I think there is this question of like, do we want to add like any potentially like interface breaking changes into that release, or should we just like figure out like what from the main stuff should be in that release?
So why don't we just open some issues?
Yeah.
Make sense? Okay. Are we ready to start making changes in a 3.0 branch? Is anybody ready to create that branch and start maintaining it? Or do we want to start capturing what goes into it first?
I think, I mean, maybe, yeah, I guess like it wouldn't hurt like if we had like a 3.0 branch.
At the moment, main is, as written here, contains 3.0 content.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Was that intentional, or is that just the?
I think the idea was like we wanted to get okay, I don't recall this exactly, but I think it was related to adding Go mod into main, like to switching to Go modules, and since that required some changes, that I believe we had to change the import path to v3 because of some breaking changes. And because of that, it was like, yeah, we should cut the 3.0 from main or something like that. And to be honest, like don't take me by my word. I'm just like sort of piecing my memory together.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is the branching structure people want to follow? Is main the active release, and then we generate a fork off of it as the main release goes to 3.0, main is 3.0, but today I would assume it's 2.7, And then as we go to 2.8, 2.7 gets archived as a branch, and then main is the current. But how is it that this team wants to manage it? Because it's, you know, always a choice for people.
I personally think like we should have release branches and like merge into main and then just like release from the branches. Like basically what you just described. I think that's probably the best way to go forward. Well, that's my opinion. Like I'm not saying like everybody should agree with me. But the current main should definitely be the base for 3.0.
But is main, well, so main wouldn't actually be the 3.0 branch yet. Well, so main, normally I would think main would be 2.7 and moving to 2.8, but we're kind of skipping right now, and main is kind of jumped ahead.
Yeah, I think 2.8 should be probably based off 2.7.
I would almost think that 3.0 would be a branch that would get merged to main when it got to a point of stability, but
Yeah.
so what do we want to happen here?
I mean, I would like main to be just the unreleased version of like the latest major version. So right now main would be 3.x.x, right? It was just, and then you, as you say, like, okay, this is going to be our 3.0 or 3.1 or whatever, then branch off into a release branch. And then have 2.8 be a, as people have said, 2.8 is a branch off of 2.7, because I think we did.
Oh, that's why you're saying you can't really create 2.8 off of main, because main has already run too far ahead.
Yeah, because main already has go mod in it. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, like we should make 2.8 of 2.7. Yeah.
Given that I don't think we're going to be doing any active development other than fixes on the 2.0 branch at this point, I'm quite happy with merging 2.8 out of branching 2.8 out of 2.7, and then using main for 3.0 releases and creating a branch for each one that can be used in future for fixes.
Sounds good. Okay. We've got 5 minutes left. I wanted to at least have some discussion around the logo conversation. Where is it? Where'd it go? Did I put it here? Oh, here it is. So, so we kind of been trying to get this figured out to have a logo. There was a set of conversations around maintaining the oyster to pay some homage. There was some that have more deep history into how this was created and after the fact. And you know, there's always lots of details in the sausage factory, so to speak. Can you guys see my screen? Okay, I don't have the normal border, so it's a little confused there. And then there was some conversation that maybe the googly eyes was a little too cute. Obviously, you could go either way with that. And then we were trying to have some kind of branding of colors to have the CNCF colors. If you look at some of the OCI logos, they have this deeper blue in it, for instance, where CNCF has a softer colors. Those are just some of the elements that were going into it. So there was an artist that was contracted, or not, Amy set up some stuff with an artist to get these rendered, and we iterated a couple of things. This is where we're currently at. We could certainly do another round. There's no pushback that we couldn't do another round. It seems that people were pretty, and I felt I kind of try to do that and explain that we can get a different round of artwork if we wanted. But I seem to have a pretty good consensus. There was one comment that seems to have since been gone, that everybody's got opinions, so it's fair. Are we at this point? It seems like we have pretty good consensus that 7 wins by 1 step of. Wait, let me double check my math here. Yeah, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 marks for 8. It's not a huge sampling size here, but that's the feedback we've had. So is anybody, my only concern with 7 would be this font on here was a little soft. So maybe grab a more distinct, and maybe it's just the rendering here, but maybe pull this over to this. But if everybody's good with that and there's no other input, we'll get that finalized and pop it on our org and throw it on the big CNCF wall of logos.
Do you think we could do another round?
Absolutely.
Based on this round, can we have, since we gravitated around 7 and 8, could we have another round of logos that are more in that direction? Because like you said, I also don't like the font on 7 now that you mention it. So we could refine it one step.
I'm trying to not take away my screen while, so I'll bring out old trusty notepad. Stronger. I want bolder, but sharper. Oops. And so remember, the artists are not experts in our industry. We basically give them a bunch of input. We can send them a couple of different icons. When I did the OCI artwork one, there was a ton of images there was a lot of images, and trying to feed information to the artist helped. Here's what we're thinking. Here's the kind of scenarios. And then that artist can take that idea and render it in something to try to convey what we're saying. So other than the font, is there something else that you'd like to see changed? It doesn't have to be from what we're seeing here, right? Pull something completely off the wall.
I'm wondering if we could do a flat googly eye, not necessarily googly eye, but like a flat sort of oyster, but maybe eyes are not, something more like the gopher.
Personable.
Yeah, something more because I think the oyster, it is cute. And that's and I think something a little more a refresh on that, because I think logos 1 through 5 were a little more trying to keep the classic, I guess. So if we had like a refresh of the cute oyster, that would be interesting to see.
When you say a refresh the cute oyster, you want to try to figure out how to bring some of the oyster back into the, let me bring up the OCI artifacts one just as an example. So here's a long list, right? And for each one of those, we had to bring a description, but you can see there's a common theme in some sense. I think that if I were to tease out some of the questions, is like you could argue whether some of these really convey a lot of details that, disks or firewalls and so forth. But there's, for lack of a better word, a sense of professionalism to them, which can be very staunchy. The conversations I get into marketing sometimes is interesting. So I want to bring that sense of creativity out. That please don't hear me trying to do the very bland thing. But there's a balance. Where'd the other one go? And I'm trying to figure out how do we facilitate that balance.
Right. So I think if you look at the oyster, the original oyster, it could be sans googly eyes, it could be on like the cover of an O'Reilly book, right? You know, it's very line drawing of an animal. If you look at the gopher for Golang, it's a little flatter, it's a little more stylized. There's just it's softer, right? You know, it doesn't have like as much detail, but there's a little more, but it retains like character. It's so hard to talk about art, especially as a programmer.
Yeah.
But if that makes sense, like something a little, you know, we can keep it character based, but kind of a refresh, like just kind of less
Try to
O'Reilly.
maintain some of the character-ish, like the personalization of it,
Yeah.
fun side of it.
Try to maintain some of the fun, but yeah, try to maintain some of the fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, Jan just like send a link to CNCF project logos, and you can see like some of them have a
eyes in different colors.
Yeah, Jagger.
Yeah, so we probably can open our mind to communicate with them.
Yeah, we just got to feed them ideas. Like, I don't know if you've ever built a house or done any of that stuff. There's always that feed them ideas, get stuff out of your brain. In fact, you know, you're supposed to bring lots of pictures and show them things you like and show them things you don't like, and then they can try to render it. I imagine your customers coming to you and you're trying to design software. It's that same kind of process. There's no immediate pressing date for this. We're just trying to get, you know, as with everything, try to get some closure. So Haley, if you've got some other ideas, I don't know, I think you're on Slack as well, or anybody for that matter, send me the ideas, put them on. Actually, the best thing would be just put them in this repo. I've put those ideas here, and then why don't I do this? Let's leave this open for the week. And I will wait for some more feedback as people watch the video and hear it and provide more feedback. And then we'll do another round with the artist. Sound good?
So what's the ETA for this icon selection? I mean,
what's the ETA?
Yeah. So
what's the ETA for 2.8 and 3.0?
I mean,
it's up to us.
so I mean the logo discussion for that. So
I'll try to cap it at a week. So Haley, thank you. That's the kind of conversation we want to have. Without that conversation, we were just basically going to pick 7, it looked like. So I'm more than happy, like we're all more than happy to have another iteration. We've got funding for it. So I'll take the comments that Haley just gave. I'll put them in the notes. I'll give till Friday to capture more feedback from people. And then next week, we'll, I think Amy said something about the things get locked down because of KubeCon, I think it was, some stuff that's going on, or some event. I've lost track of all of them. It's all the COVID merge. So let me find out from her what the time frame is on getting the next iteration back, and we'll go from there. But I'll leave a window open from here till Friday for additional feedback that we'll hand off to the artist. All right, we're past 8. Thanks.
There's
folks.
one last thing. There is one last thing which I should have mentioned. Justin has asked me about the Mirantes maintainers. So there was a PR which we merged in, which someone was adding Mirantes maintainers, but apparently there has to be some like 2/3 votes about it or something, which Justin told me just this morning, which I wasn't aware of it. And he asked me to like bring it up.
So if I understand the question, why don't we just queue it up for next week? Because we're over, I've got to get to another meeting. I want to be conscious of time, and let's.
Yeah, I can do that. I'll actually, you know what, like I'll also send it to Slack as well. But no, it's a good idea. Yeah, let's talk about it next week. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have enough. We obviously don't have all the maintainers even on this call. So
yeah, I'm not like, this is like, he told me like this is what he told me this morning. He was like, he saw there should be some kind of like public vote, like 2/3 of the maintainers are supposed to like agree and like stuff like that. I wasn't aware of it, but anyways, yeah, let's talk about it next week.
Have a great week, folks. We'll see you later.